after a couple of calm days, the wind has picked back up again, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me above the roar of the wind and lots of activity going on in the neighborhood today, because it is one of those days I'm so excited, because we are really kicking you know what and getting stuff done around here. Finally, my sprinkler repair is going to be finalized. I've got somebody coming today to help me heave hoe some great big bags of manure, and I've got help coming today. So I've called in the cavalry, which will be very helpful. So let's talk today about what we're going to discuss. And I'm hoping that today's walkabout is going to be just chock full of all sorts of tips and tricks and ideas for you. But first, let us pause for a moment to look at how beautiful everything looks. So lush. I love the hues of nothing but purple and green and yellow and white now. I think it looks really spectacular, and everything is finally doing what I like for it to do, and that is fill in so densely that there's hardly any places for weeds to grow or for trees to volunteer or even for squirrels to dig. And I really like that. I think of it as living mulch. So tell me what you think, if you also like the idea of living mulch, or if you like things to be a little bit, have their own space, because that's also a look I really like, where things have their own defined and dedicated space with mulch in between them. But right now, I think the front looks lovely, and I'll give it some more definition by pruning and things a little bit later. So let's talk about my first tip, which is, why do I do Wednesday walkabouts? And let's walk about as we talk. So my sister was asking me how I came up with this idea and why I do them every Wednesday. And I told her it's because when I first started to garden, what I really wanted to do was be a fly on the wall or a bird on someone's shoulder who could garden really well, and see what they did in their gardens over time to help me know what to do when, but also because I wanted to see how their beautiful garden changed and transitioned over time. And so that is one of the reasons that I do this, because I want really to communicate what an evolving, miraculous organism a garden is, and see how when one thing fades, something else comes to take its place. Stuart was pointing out all of the beautiful digitalis or foxglove, and this is, yes, and you did. There's some over there, Stuart. Look by the bird bath. There's going to be a bunch of towering foxglove over there. And yes, this is digitalis. It is what that heart medication is made from, so it is poisonous, though I have never known it to be a problem for anyone who had animals or pets or children. So it's one of those things, just know thy own garden and the residents of the garden. So after the tulips are done, the Columbine is spectacular this year. You can see pretty much, as I pointed out before, that most of it in front is purple, and there's just huge swaths of it. And I love the way it kind of floats and waves in the breeze. Stuart, if you don't mind, I want to show this whole grouping over in here, because it's so over here, because it's just so dense, and you can see a subtle difference in the shade. One is a little bit more blue and one is a little bit more purple, but all of this went to seed, and that's how I find it does its best when you plant it from seed. So that would be another tip. Right now, if you want to have Columbine or foxglove in your garden, I would recommend sowing some seeds now. The foxglove will not bloom this year, but it will put on growth. It will germinate, put on growth, and hopefully bloom next year. And that's the cycle, especially for biennials, that you want to keep going. So now is a great time, while we still have pretty reliable rains and it's not too hot. Now's a good time to sow some foxglove. Another thing that has just done brilliantly is all the hellebores. It's almost gotten too mammoth, and I'm gonna have to divide it and take some of this out, but it does make a wonderful, wonderful ground cover. And then I have just gone on and on about the encore azaleas and how well they did in just surviving our temperature extremes, but now they're all starting to bloom. And this one is rapidly becoming one of my favorites. This is Autumn Lily, I believe. It's largely white, but it's got just a hint, I don't know if you can see it, just a hint on the other side of kind of a fuchsia stripe. I don't know if you can see that anywhere, Stuart.
Oh, I see one right here. That's
yeah.
Right in front of your hand.
Okay, right there. Yeah, see, there's just a little hint of pink in it, and it's really lovely. And they do attract pollinators. And then I've got another, I believe that one is Autumn Ivory. It's a little bit lower. So if you want to do a staging, here's another tip. If you want to do a staging with encore azaleas, I'm getting ready to do this at a friend of mine's down the street, and you want an all white garden, then I highly recommend reblooming encores. This one is Autumn Lily, and I believe that one is Moonlight. So you could have one in the background that's taller and one in the foreground that's a little bit shorter, and the white just looks absolutely scrumptious from a design perspective against anything that is evergreen. This is just common Chinese holly, and of course the boxwood looks beautiful. And these over here are also blooming. A lot of them got damaged in the ice storm, and some of them had a setback when it got very, very cold. But here is another one of those, the Autumn Lily with a little pink on it. And I like the fact that even though there are buds along the stems, I do like the fact that that you can kind of see through them to other areas in the garden. And then this one is just yummy. So I'm working with someone else who wanted this kind of coral color, not so much in spring, but she wants it in fall. And this looks beautiful in fall, and it can take on kind of an autumnal quality, I think, that time of year. So all of this is really filling out, it's benefiting from all of the manure and the top dressing that I gave it after it was just so traumatized. And then these are all of the foxglove over here. I think of this section as kind of my secret garden. Ooh, are you okay, Stuart? Yeah, okay. As kind of my secret garden back in here, because it's not something that's clearly visible from the street, but it gives me a little bit of protection from my neighbors, a little bit of privacy. These Foster hollies that were so damaged in the ice storm, they are really flushing out in new growth. So pretty soon, this is going to be a lovely little oasis over here, and I will continue to seed foxglove and columbine. There's different kinds of hellebore in here, and I'm so glad that I saved this big massive section of trunk of my oak tree, because it gives a person a little place to sit. There have been a number of children who have had some spring pictures taken here already, and there'll be more once the foxglove is in bloom. So it's a cute place to stage photographs for children or for adults. And it's just a nice little place that I can sit here and get a different perspective on my garden than I normally do. So that would be another tip. If you've got a downed trunk, a downed section, large section of a tree trunk or wood, then definitely think about using it as seeding or even as a form of garden ornament in your own garden. Stuart, if you don't mind coming over here so you can see from this perspective what the garden looks like from this vantage point, and it looks different, and I see an area and a view I don't really get from any other location. So it's kind of fun, and you can see all of the foxglove and the columbine starting to poke their little heads up and wave in the breeze. So that would be another tip, is make sure that you enjoy your garden from different perspectives and different angles, which will also be helpful in photographing your garden, or if in the future, like me, you ever have a magazine or someone that wants to come out and professionally photograph your garden, you will already know where some of these best axes are, some of the best views, some of the best angles, and some of the best lighting. Now, another reason that I do these Wednesday walkabouts is because it not only gives you an idea of how the garden has transformed over time and in what sequence, but it also is a record for me. So I can go back a year in time and say, oh gosh, this is what was happening at this same time last year, and this is what it looks like this year. So I can make comparisons. It's like a video garden journal. I can make comparisons from one year to the next. Now, I'm doing this for my Wednesday walkabout and for my channel, but you guys could do the same thing. Just get out your cell phone, get out your video camera, and record what it looks like week to week, so that you have documentation of your own garden and pleasing arrangements and compositions that you may have created and that you really want to remember. Over here, Stuart, I want to show, because I've been talking about it and I want you all to see it in bloom. I have been talking about the Minoan lace, which is a more genteel, well-mannered version of Queen Anne's lace, and here it is in bloom. And this is tough, you guys. It's frost tolerant. It is, I should say, drought tolerant, and it will go to seed in lots of different places, and it's one of those plants that I just let romp and go wherever it wants to go. And I think it's really beautiful, and I love this aspect of its lending this pristine white to the garden, and it's a great pollinator magnet. So I always make sure to save lots of seed and throw that around in other areas of the garden. You can see right at your feet, Stuart, there's another one getting started. And then if you want a pretty tough plant, you might want to record this as an idea. If you want a really tough blooming shrub for a difficult aspect that's very windy, that is pretty dry and also very hot, then look at some of the drift roses. And I have two drift roses here. This one blooms in pink pretty soon. You can see that I've got one bloom here. And you can see all of those clusters. This takes minimal care, minimal attention. I periodically whack it back, but look how pretty this color is blooming, and it will be blooming simultaneously with this vivid, I believe this is the vivid pink dianthus, and this is a southern living plant. Look at that, it's a perfect color echo. So this will be a beautiful thing that people will see when they drive down the street, because it will come into play about the time that the blue and white is starting to fade. And then there are some more crepe myrtles that are also tough, that can handle this same aspect of really hot and really dry. Here's an area right here. I demonstrated last week how after the phlox is finished blooming, I will cut it back and groom it and mound it so that it grows more tidily and also fills out. I give it at this point a gentle organic feed and make sure it's really well watered. So, not well rotted, Stuart, well watered, so that it doesn't turn brown, because again, this is south facing and is very, very hot. So much going on today on the street, lots of trucks and things. And then this, if you look through from here, there's a great vista standing about where I am or where Stuart is, all the way through in blue and white to the window box. You can see the bacopa in the urns. You can see the white yarrow there that came from my sister's house. It needs to be divided, but it's pretty beautiful. Hi, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. If I do say so myself. And it gives passersby and people who drive by some great pleasure. But I love the calming quality of this blue and purple and white and green and yellow after all of the tulips. I find it very restful and really beautiful. One of my favorite combinations. So let's come back up this way, Stuart. There's a few hellebores that are still blooming, but look here, if I wanted to shop my garden, this is the kind of thing I look for. Here is a little juniper, a little blue point juniper, that if I wanted to dig that out, bring it in, pot it up, make a small Christmas tree out of it or a topiary out of it. These are the kinds of things that I'm always looking for on my walkabouts. So that's another question for you. If you like to shop your garden, what kinds of things are you looking for and shopping for in your garden aisles of your own landscape? Let's come this way. And I'm going to point out some more steel from Peter to pay Paul. I'm going to remove 2 of these Nandina. I believe, I don't think these are obsessions. The obsessions are the dark, pretty purple ones over there from Southern Living Plants. You can see one over there. The foliage is prettier. But I'm going to remove these and plant them in the back in some voids that I've got. And I'm also doing this because my sprinkler guys just told me that these were blocking a sprinkler head. So I'm going to solve 2 problems simultaneously. I will create a lot of clearance, a lot of room for the sprinkler head to reach this area that gets kind of dry, but I'll also be shopping my garden to fill in a void that I've got in the backyard, and I'm not having to spend any money. I'm not even having to get in the car. And look how beautiful the plum yews are looking. And this is what I love about the Columbine and this Senecio aurea. It just kind of, it looks like a primrose, and I think it might also be called fleabane, but it goes to seed and it comes up just everywhere. And Mother Nature is often a better designer, usually is a better designer than I am. And look, there's a foxglove. So it just came up where it wanted. There's some more Minoan lace. And I continue. As things fade in here, I just continue to add more plumbago and other annuals. I've added more yellow coleus in here, so by the time the pansies are finished, this should be pretty full. And I just continue to do that. So now let's go to the back and let's put me to work a little bit. And I want to show you something really fun. I think this time, Stuart loves it when he shows me something and I squeal with delight. Well, Stuart squealed with delight on this one. I'm still getting my driveway worked over, but I planted some beautiful daffodils. I believe these were from Breck's. And I had forgotten that in this pot, to take up space, I had put one of my gourds. It was one of those warty, knotty gourds that has all of those lumps and bumps on it. I think it was the gray one. And I had put it in here to take up space. And I came out here the other day and it had rotted down and so many of these seeds had germinated. Talk about a fun surprise. It's just so fun. I love that kind of thing. It looks pretty happy in there. Stuart was asking me what it will do, and I said, well, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna just let it do its thing, leave it there, and just see what happens. I'll probably thin it out a little bit. I've got some work I'm gonna do here with some more gravel. my bulbs of muscari that are finished. I am going to plant, that were in pots, I'm going to plant in the ground. Now come back here, Stuart, and you can see I've got all sorts of projects going back here. But by the end of the day, with help, I will have a lot of it knocked out. So this morning, can you tell what I did this morning? I clipped these beautifully because I'm having to transition some stuff in and out off of the back porch. This is what it looked like before I painted my irrigation box, my control box for my sprinkler system, and then I painted it that dark color so it pretty much just disappears. And then I've got a boxwood that I'm going to transplant, and I'll put it here, and it will be something that will be easy. I can still access the sprinkler box, but it will kind of camouflage it a little bit and ground it in place. And this is a boxwood that I'm also trimming on that I transplanted from someplace else. So pretty soon, and some of you asked, and here is my reasoning, that for goodness sake, why don't I replace the awning over my door? Well, part of it is because I know this may seem strange, but I absolutely love the color of the green and gray of the lichens on there. It has that decrepit Old English quality that I like, but it is starting to fray around the scalloping on the perimeter of it, so I probably will replace it pretty soon. And I periodically also have my my steps and things power washed, and I'll probably do that, but not till after I get all of my zhuzhing done, because everything will be in place and perfect by Mother's Day. So I still have these to prune, and like I say, I normally put down a tarp, but for this demonstration I'm not going to. But this is typically how I start pruning these boxwood balls. And what I have found is it's very meditative for me. So this morning I did not really intend to prune those, but I had my coffee cup in hand. I always have some scissors. And so I started pruning this one. And then while I was talking to my sister on the phone, you just saw a mosquito, our first one. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, uh-oh. They love Stuart. Fortunately, they don't love me. And then I moved up and I did the other two. And then that tells me that I want to do these. So I will get out my tarp and I'll prune both of these, and then pretty soon this whole area will be finished. Oh, the mosquitoes, yes. And I start at the top. I'm so sorry that they love you so much, Stuart.
Trying to bite my hands, I almost get him.
And it's, so here we go. So I will prune both of these. I start at the top and then work my way around. The Columbine it's just held on so long. And I love that it's held on so long. Here's another idea of when you have blocks of wood. This is some sections of trunk from my oak tree that would make great seating, especially if you had a woodland garden. It could be, if you leveled it, it could make a cute little table, side table. But I just love the organic quality of it, so I leave it there in case I want to rest anything on it. Here is another tip or another idea that may seem kind of strange, but I have found it helpful this year. So if you're like me, even though I'm a little bit better about it, I am always putting my pruners, and I have all sorts of different types of pruners, different types of gardening equipment. These are some of those wonderful Centurion loppers that I like so much because they really are strong and they're telescoping. I think last year we did a video for them, a sponsored video. This year, not sponsored, I just love them. And Stuart, let's try to put a link to these. But I have so many different garden tools like you do, and a lot of times I'm interrupted. Somebody will drop by, I'll set them down. I can't remember where I set them down, or I will store them. Sometimes I'll even be good about putting them back. But then I forget which storage area I have placed them. So the point of this roundabout explanation is I used to identify a job that needed to be done, and then I would spend all sorts of time looking for my tools to do that job. Now what I have started doing is when I see the tool and I've already observed that a job needs to be done, I'll pick up the tool immediately and then I'll go and do that job. And it kind of eliminates that hunting for the tool portion of that whole exercise, because I already have them. I already know where they are, and then I can come back in here and I can prune my yews, I can prune the akuba, I can prune whatever I have already identified that needs to be done. And that's exactly what I did this morning. When I spotted these pruners, I came across them and I immediately came out and pruned some things off of the shrubs in this area that needed to be pruned, and I didn't have to hunt for my pruners because that's where they were, where I found them. I didn't have to look for them, and they were kind of the reminder and the catalyst, or the string on my finger that reminded me that I wanted to come in and cut out some dead wood and do that. So it's kind of doing a job in reverse, identifying the job and looking for the tool. Well, here you just see the tool and then you go out and do the job. Does that make any sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Stuart? Okay, look at how pretty the window box is starting to come out. Those hostas have really grown. You can see on the ends that the fern are starting to come out. All of these things are perennials, you guys, and they come back. I had some indoor plants, ivy plants. I have planted that in this window box, another instance of stealing from Peter to pay Paul. And then I have some dragon wing begonias that hopefully will be part of my QVC plant line. I love dragon wing begonias, and I took some of those little pellets and I just dropped them in here in this shady location. They can handle both sun and partial sun, and I think they'll be fine in here. So that is really filling out. An update on the Amaryllis. I'm so thrilled because so many of you guys told me that you have tried this, of putting your Amaryllis bulbs outside, planting them all together and putting them outside to give you summer foliage and a pretty specimen plant. And then if you leave them in there long enough and protect them from frost, they will eventually bloom. And look at all the buds coming up, Stuart. That other pot bloomed magnificently, and this one is not going to disappoint either. And then after these finish blooming, I will cut off the stalks. Remind me to show you something cool to do with the stalks. Cut off the stalks, and then I'll have just a wonderful foliage plant right there. And this guy is over here. It needs to be leveled, but I'm going to do some entertaining, and this is where I'm going to stage some drinks and hors d'oeuvres. I love having these kind of tiered tables that I can move about in different places of the garden, either to do, last year I think I had a geranium theater on this. This year I'm going to leave it here just for when I am entertaining outside, whether that's in the spring or the fall. So now, Stuart, let's come this way. Obviously, work in progress. I have all sorts of things in the drought tolerant collection from Brex that I'm getting ready to plant, but I wanted to show you these. These two planters actually don't belong to me. They belong to my trainer, Johanna, whom you have met before, and her sister. And they got these as Easter baskets from their mom for Easter. And aren't they cute? And they're not really my style of gardening, but I think they're adorable. And they're perfect for these young gals. There's a drainage hole in them, and I think their mom said they got them at Sam's. So be on the lookout for them. They are metal, and they're just really cute. And they have a drainage hole in them. So if you are, attention Sam's shoppers, if you are a Sam's shopper or whatever, you might want to look for these, because this would be, it would be a fun gift for someone for Mother's Day or whatever. And then I've got all sorts of potting that I need to do. Let's come back this way, Stuart, if we can. Here's the rest of those Amaryllis, still going strong. I decided to add more red geraniums to the party because it's the perfect color combo of these red Amaryllis and that red geranium, some of which I already had started. And thank you guys so much for sharing with me what some of your most sentimental plants were and are. Lots of stuff going on back here, you guys. Just lots of stuff. This snowball viburnum is probably, this smaller one this is probably the best it's ever bloomed, and it really looks beautiful, and I love the way the white blooms contrast with my newly painted black furniture over there. So giving your furniture a refresh is always a good tip. And the Deutzia is very, very happy. But this is the Amaryllis trick that I wanted to show you. So when those large Amaryllis have finished blooming and you're cutting off the stalks, this is something that I do during the holidays, but also this time of year. So you've got this stalk and they're hollow. If you just cut off both ends, and you can do two things. I have let them dry, and then I have used them as a plant support for dried allium heads in a dried arrangement, because this will turn brown and dry, and they make a wonderful support for things that have flowers and dried flowers that have a really large and heavy head. They're kind of top heavy. This supports them. But this is I love this idea right now while it's fresh and green. You can take this, put this in a flower arrangement, and anything that you have that might be top heavy, regardless of what it is, it could be a long stem of something, and you want it to give it support, then you just put this in your water vase, and then you put whatever it is that's blooming into the stalk, and you can create a small little arrangement just within the stalk, but it gives support. Otherwise, when I put this in the flower arrangement, it would do this. This enables it to go vertical. I think I talked about this in my book. I'm not really sure, but it's a great idea to reuse something that you already have in your garden. So I've got a number of these Amaryllis stalks that I've already cut off that I'm allowing to dry, that I will be using this fall to hold, branches of beautiful fall leaves, different things like that for when I want to make a fall arrangement, because even though it's spring, I'm always thinking about the seasons that are to come. So that is another idea. Yeah, I kind of do too, and the fall color. And then I'll end up back here. This has been kind of a long walkabout. Stuart's arms are probably getting tired. Well, I guess
Remember my mosquito suit?
that's our clue, and mosquito spray. But I want to point out how beautiful this climbing old blush rose looks on here. And this was such a surprise because the original climbing old blush that I had that had a trunk that was probably this big, I kid you not, it succumbed to rose rosette, that dreaded rose disease that deforms the rose and is also can create problems for any other rose you have in the landscape. There's not really a cure for it. Well, this happened to have bent over, rooted in place. I allowed it to stay in place, and lo and behold, where it had propagated itself, where it had layered into the earth, this rose is not affected. This one is very healthy. So if you too want to propagate a rambler rose like this one, all you have to do is take a branch, let's say on the soil, just secure the branch at the point of a leaf node, secure it, just to make sure that there is good soil to branch contact. You could put a brick right there on it. You could put a floral pick. You could put an irrigation pick. You could just bury it. Don't sever it from the original plant until it has set out a root system from that leaf node. Once you feel like it has established itself as a plant, then you sever it from the mother plant and you can move it someplace else. In this case, this did it all by itself. It just did it naturally from the weight of the stem. Yeah, be careful. We're having to, Stuart has to work backwards. And then I'm going to end up on my final, I just am so excited about this. So these pots that had tulips in them, and then one of my gardening risks worth taking was I had a bunch of poppy seeds, and I just sprinkled those poppies in here, and I will probably do some thinning on these, but maybe not. I may just see if they can tough it out on their own. But they look beautiful, and then I put these two plant towers in here, and I think they look, it makes a beautiful composition. I love the way it looks as I'm going into the potager, because entrance is really important. I did a video last week about how I, as a garden project, I put some tiles underneath these. I covered up the tiles, planted some things around them, hid my irrigation system. Here I went to all that trouble, Stuart, to hide my irrigation system, and then I've left my hose out. But again, this is a work in progress, and I think they're going to be beautiful, and then I'll plant something else in them later after the poppies are finished and the boxwood is starting to come out. So overall, I am a happy, happy camper. Oh, let me also point out, you guys, these beautiful white iris. These are reblooming iris. They're part of the Brex collection. They're part of the Brex collection. I get too excited and I move too quickly for Stuart. But these last year I just had planted for the first time. They didn't bloom, but they're blooming now. And look at all these new shoots that are coming up. And with a little feed, I'm hoping they'll rebloom in the fall. So I'll put a link to these also. And then I guess that'll about do it today. Stuart, let's close with a look back this way at the Deutzia, at the blooming hydrangeas, at my pretty basket of dragonwing begonias that are about to explode into color. And even though there's a lot of stuff going on and I've got tools and things everywhere, it's still a very beautiful environment for us to work in, isn't it, Stuart?
Very much.
So there you go. Thank you for keeping me company on this Wednesday walkabout. Well, here is my outfit of the day that Stuart was kind of making fun of me for. He said he wasn't, but I kind of think he was, saying I looked like some kind of Canadian Mountie or something. So it might be a little costumey today if it is. If it is, that's just how the garden rolls. So my hat is from Target. My top is from a little store that I go to in the Paseo. I've mentioned it before, Eden. My breeches are, I love really thin joggers that aren't so bulky, and especially when they have pockets. And these black ones I wore this morning when I went out exercising. I still have them on. on, and these were from Target. My boots are hunter boots. I got these off of eBay, and they're very distinctive from other hunter boots, so I kind of like them. And my earrings are online, and I will put a link. This is one of you get a whole bunch of wooden earrings at one time. I think there's like 12 pairs or something. So you can take them apart and gift them to other people, or you can hoard them all for yourself. So, and then they would make a great Mother's Day gift, I think. They're very, very lightweight, which is what I like about them. So there you go. There's my outfit of the day.